crowds. Treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel. Yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 64 of the Smash Accept podcast. We are live. It is Thanksgiving week, so we got the cowbell out, you know. I'm excited. I'm excited for this week. You know, we are so close to playoffs. Had a lot of great, feedback from our last two podcasts where we talked about how to rebuild, how to contend. You know, Mung can't be on tonight, but John and I are really going to drop some hints on some trade tips, way to get things done when you're on either side, talk about who's hot, who's not, and really just things that we're thankful for in the fantasy industry. So, John, without further ado, what do you got going right now that's you're super thankful for?
Yeah, to quote Marshawn Lynch, I'm thankful. I'm thankful. Go watch that press conference. It's classic. But I really am. This week is such a great week to just reflect on all the blessings you have in your life. You know, for me, it's faith, family, football, food, and fantasy, right? And definitely thankful for you too, Dad. And it really, I got to tell you, looking at week 11, that was probably the most fun I've had in any given week during the season, just because some of the players I just love just blew up, and a lot of scoring, some big fantasy totals, a lot of fun competitions across the league. So can't wait to unpack with you here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, it was a fun week. Other people, it was kind of it was tough, right? I mean, Hopkins is out, Murray's out, Robinson. Yeah. I mean, so many players out. I mean, Smash except one, I was missing 7 starters, and it's like there's so many different leagues where I'm getting guys messaging, hey, should I start this player or that player? I'm like, oh, man. Like that's, especially at the wide receiver position, so many guys out. But some guys really blew up this week, and we're going to get into that. But we got to talk about Jonathan Taylor first. We really have to talk about, he now has over 1,000 rushing yards on the season. He has put up over the past 8 weeks. We have not seen something this dominant, right? We talked about it last year over the final 8, but right now we're looking at 1,200 total yards and 15 touchdowns over the last 8 weeks. If you had him, depending on the scoring format, it was between 50 and 64 points. If you lost with Jonathan Taylor, this was not a week for you, right? I mean, that should have been fantasy gold. I did beat 2 guys that had him, and it was like, they were talking trash the whole time. Yeah. But it's like those kind of performances are just amazing to watch when you're a fantasy owner, right? You're just like 185 yards, 5 touchdowns, and it's like, as a Bills fan there, I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like, ugh. They just cannot stop him. But Jonathan Taylor, without a doubt, is the Dynasty 101 and belongs, even in Superflex, I believe, in that top 3 to 4 conversation right now.
No, full stop. Jonathan Taylor, that was one of the reasons I loved the week so much. My home Dynasty league, I have Jonathan Taylor, and I set the single highest point total of the season in any one week, and so that was a lot of fun. But he truly is just my most favorite player in the NFL right now. Just watching this guy, just the talent that he has, and watching him put up, I guess it ended up being over 200 yards total, 5 touchdowns. I don't remember seeing anything quite that dominant since like the Alvin Kamara Christmas game last season. You just don't see, it's legendary to do something like that. You just got to stop and say, this is special. And now, I mean, Mike, you could get whatever you want in trades for Jonathan Taylor. I'm seeing some crazy stuff out there, but he's the 101 in Dynasty. He's the 101 in redraft next year too, in my mind.
So here's the thing I started debating, right, is we've had some quarterback struggles at the top. Kyler's been banged up. Mahomes has been very hit or miss. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen's been hit or miss. And I started debating this right now with a couple people of like, should we say 101? We're talking in Superflex. Yeah. It's still Mahomes for me, but man, is it getting close, right? I mean, he is in that top 3 conversation. I believe
in there for sure.
If we jump in there today, and with how much I think there's a lot of budding quarterbacks and things that are happening, you at least have to consider it, right?
Right, and you have to kind of come back to the positional advantages and giving your roster an advantage. Like, is Mahomes that much better than the other quarterbacks in his tier? is Jonathan Taylor almost in his own tier right now? I mean, we're almost getting to that point where you would want to consider him as a top 5 startup pick, even in a Superflex league. It's gotten to that point. It's worth considering. So it's just like, I wish I had him on more rosters, but I know right now is just not the time to try and get him.
I know. I mean, I soured a little bit last year, and I did trade one away when I started to really love A.J. Brown. And then I made some moves where I picked him up. You know, I thought it was an overpay going into the season. You know, I gave up Jalen Waddle and Clyde Edwards-Helaire for him, 2 for 1. But I was like, yeah, you know what? I really need this running back upgrade. And man, I mean, that is paid off big time, even though I like both of those players. Speaking of Waddle, let's jump into some games here. I want to talk about the Miami and New York game first, right? So 2 budding rookie wide receivers.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen it from Waddle, and Mung and I were talking about last week. He's saying if he's buying anybody right now, it's Jalen Waddle. I was saying if I'm buying anybody, it's Devonta Smith. Elijah Moore took some offense to that, right? We've been seeing it. The writing's been on the wall, but he hasn't been getting the snap count. This week he comes out 8 for 141 and a touchdown, and just shocked it, right? Like, he absolutely killed it. He was out there for 49 snaps, 36 routes run, 9 targets. He even had a carry in there. And Elijah Moore is officially on the radar now. I mean, you have to, even for redraft, I picked him up last week or 2 weeks ago, and now I'm like, he's a must start. Like, I feel like you have to roll him out there, and he looked fantastic.
Yeah, he's actually now scored 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he's getting a lot more targets. What's really impressive here too is the quarterbacks that he's doing it with. That's been the only reason that I've kind of knocked him this season. It's not on him, actually. It's just the quarterback situation. You guys know I've been down on Zach Wilson.
He's back this week, right?
Yeah, he's coming back. I mean,
Joe Flacco was elite.
Joe Flacco seagulls makes it happen.
Yeah.
And mixing a little bit of Mike effing White. It's been a kind of a QB carousel there. But once they figure it out in that new offense, again, it's that kind of that West Coast offense. It reminds me a lot of the 49ers. And so he could end up being kind of like that Deebo Samuel type player. And so I really, really think it would still be a good time before he completely blows up to try and go snag him. Certainly after this past week, it may be tough, but look for opportunities to trade for him. What would you give up for Elijah Moore right now?
I feel like I'm not sure if I'm at it. Like, we usually talk super flex. I'm not at a mid first, but anything 108 or later,
I think so.
I think I would do it. Like anything above that, and I feel like we're looking at some pretty nice running backs. There's always going to be some quarterbacks sprinkled in, but I mean, if you have 108 to 112 range, and you can give up, you give that and a throw-in type player to get Elijah Moore, I think. But from what I've been trying to say is I try to see what I can get, and I asked the one guy, I'm really wide receiver needy, and I know he's in a rebuild, but I was like, Elijah Moore, what's the cost? He goes, 2 firsts, and that's where he's at. And he also owns Jalen Waddle, and he said the same thing. Now, I mean, every league's price dependent, and it's tough to buy someone like that, right? Because you're not necessarily buying him if you're a win now team, but it wouldn't hurt. But you're also not giving him up if you're a team where this is the dichotomy we get into right here at the end of the year. Is we got these trade partners, and it's like some of us are trying to win, some of us are trying to rebuild. And I know you and I were talking about this a little bit, but it's like right now the guy who is in the rebuild is the guy who holds all the cards, right? We all want to win. Totally. If you're trying to win now, this is some overpay type pieces. And we're going to talk about Elijah Moore trade a little bit later where someone's really trying to win now and they're going to pay up Elijah Moore. And I think this is where, like, Mung and I talked about it last week, where you can make or break your fantasy roster, right? You can make some moves here. You can make some trades that really add value to your team. And I always advocate getting rid of trade deadlines because I feel like you get some really juicy trades and really start to bring the league back to even a little bit more once you get into those types of situations.
Yeah. I actually just pulled up I just went to DLF Trade Finder just to see what people are paying for Elijah Moore. And in specifically in like Superflex PPR leagues. This is interesting. Elijah Moore for Cam Newton and a second. Here's another one for Elijah Moore for Cam Newton and Jamison Crowder. Nick Chubb for Leonard Fournette and Elijah Moore. Okay. Elijah Moore and Kyle Pitts for DK Metcalf and Dawson Knox.
Yes, I mean, all of those, from what I'm hearing, are they're affordable, right? I mean, those aren't
these
crazy prices.
Still reasonable. Totally.
If you can go out there and do that right now, I'm all for it. You know,
right? Or pair up Elijah Moore in a first and get that piece that you need for your stretch run, right? Yeah. I mean, because some people are in that rebuild mode, may want to go after a player like that after a big game. You see the potential, you see the upside. He can make the big play, sell it a little bit, and that might be another thing you look at if you are sitting on this guy, but you need, let's say, a wide receiver 1 for the playoffs, right?
So, all right, well, let's get into it because we were going to talk about that trade. So I was talking with a buddy of mine, Mike Young. I'm in several leagues with him. He's a great guy. We do a lot of talking, and he said to me this week, people were like, "How you get so many trades done with Mike?" Right? We're both Mikes, but and he's like, "Well, Mike looks at my team and sees what I need. He doesn't just offer me what he has left over." Right? This is the time of year where you can look at rosters and you're like, "Man, this guy." He's going to need that young wide receiver, and I need this running back, right? So you get into situations where don't be that guy just to offer all the trash that's left on your roster heap, all those kind of things. Talk to people. Try to figure out what kind of moves we can make. And, he started a bidding war. And I'm not going to lie, we're in a league together where two of us, me and this other guy, have won. One of us has won each of the last 5 years. It's either him or it's me, and my roster's stacked, his is stacked, and Mike's got Dalvin Cook. So this is something that I'm trying to do as strategy for you guys is he put it out there to him. He's like, what do you give me for Dalvin Cook, right? So he makes the offer and the guy goes, this is what I want, and he's like, I'll give you Derrick Henry, I'll give you Elijah Moore, and I'll give you Kirk Cousins in a super flex, right? So then Mike comes back to me and he's like, can you top that? And I have no problem with that. If that's in the group chat, that's a problem. But if you go 1 versus 1, not a problem at all. So he comes to me, he goes, I really want Metcalf and David Montgomery. Are you willing to do that? So now last week it was a little bit less than that. Now he wants more, and I'm sure we're going to go back and forth here a little bit. And you can create a bidding war. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, getting the most out of your roster. If you are rebuilding, you need as much juice as possible with as little risk as possible. So, I mean, have you done that in leagues? Have you seen that done? And to me, it came across right. It's like, I got to make this work, and this is what I got.
100%. And a lot of times, you don't go to that person and say, here's what I think your strategy is or should be. You go in there and just say, hey, what are you trying to get done right now? What kind of pieces are you looking for? I mean, look, I actually do this in my job. I'm in a sales position and I have a product to sell, but I go to my customers and I'm asking them, hey, what do you need right now? What are some of the challenges you face in your organization? All right, now let's talk about that. Maybe I can help you solve some of those problems. But you're now talking about what they care about, what they need. And it just completely shifts the conversation. You want to be that guy. I think it's worth talking about that for a minute because you want to be that guy that's easy to work with, that doesn't just care about their own team. You're actually trying to help both teams win a little bit. And, that's how you're getting all those deals done is because people trust, all right, he's a reasonable guy. I'm going to see if I can work something out. And we usually do. So it's good advice.
That's literally trade tip 101. I mean,
totally.
There's guys I'm in leagues with where they will tell you why you need player X. You're like, did you not know that player X is the wide receiver 12 in rainy games? But they'll like throw stuff out there and try to like make you feel like you're dumb for not taking it. And it's like likability and being able to negotiate and treat it like a, you don't want to be a pushy car salesman. Nobody likes that. We want that guy who's like,
just be cool.
What can I do for you? Yeah, exactly. And I wish you and I could get some trades like that done, but you and I are both, boom,
we're going head
to head.
We knew it was going to be like that.
And I lost this week, but I'm gonna.
It does feel good to be alone at first for a minute, But hey, I know you're coming for me.
I didn't lose because of this guy. So let's move on to the Eagles Saints game. Jalen Hurts, yes. Wow. I before the season said top 3 to 5 quarterback in my bold take show. He is the QB1 right now in some formats. I mean, you look at what he did. 13 for 24 with 147 yards. Well, that ain't pretty. But 18 carries, tied for 10th most all-time by a quarterback in a game for 69 yards, that away Gronk, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, Jalen Hurts Mung and I were talking about last
consistent.
week that they were running the ball so well that he was not becoming valuable, but he just finds ways to score every single week, and he's just been consistent, and it's like he's not going anywhere. You know, I heard a lot of people really worried about Minshew possibly taking over. Jalen Hurts is a great dynasty buy, and this is why. Most people don't believe in it, honestly. If you go out there in your league and you start saying, hey, I want to trade Jalen Hurts, right? And last week I got no offers. I'm like, wait a second. So you start approaching some of your, some of the other owners in the league, and they're like giving you these lowball offers. You got to start thinking, if no one's buying, I should be considering this, right? Because the guy is putting up numbers. It's not like it's just my own gut. He is literally putting up numbers that are going to win fantasy championships.
Yeah, I just saw Ryan McDowell had posted this earlier. Ryan, the Godfather, we've had him on the pod before, where he's basically just saying most QB1 games this season. All right, so just got through week 11. 10, Jalen Hurts. No one else has even 9. No one else has even 8.
Yeah.
The second best in terms of QB1 games
Brady's
this season.
Got 7, right?
Brady and Cousins at 7. And then you got Prescott, Mahomes, and Heineke at 6. Then Rodgers, Carr, Allen, Herbert, Kyler, Jackson, and Stafford with 5. Half of what Hurts has done. So the consistency is there too. Let me ask you this, though, because you're dialed into Philly. The risk that I still hear about Jalen Hurts is that people don't view him as the long-term guy, and that they're going to go draft a quarterback in the draft next season, maybe even in the first. And
look where they're at right now, right? If we win, they're borderline putting themselves into a playoff spot.
It's amazing.
So if the switchover, I believe, has come more from Sirianni than it has Jalen Hurts, as soon as Miles Sanders goes down, we're committed to the run. We're not trying to just put it all on Jalen Hurts and just say, hey, let's get it done, be a pocket passer. That's not what he's good at. Now all of a sudden we got a running game going with it. You got the RPOs. Devonta Smith is starting to come in, and all of a sudden it's getting exciting, and he's doing what he's really good at week in and week out. And I feel like they're playing to his strengths instead of just saying, this is my offense and roll with it. And Jalen Hurts has been fun to watch. And I get that.
One more thing for you here too, looking at his playoff schedule. And you're going to love this. It's smash because I know you have. Now I'm a little bit worried about facing him in the playoffs. He's got Washington in weeks 15 and 17.
I know.
Washington is 32nd, dead last against QBs. So
yeah,
gotta love that. He has the Giants squeezed in week 16.
We talked about that 2 weeks ago, where on the flip side, if you have Logan Thomas who's coming back this week, the Eagles cannot cover the tight end. They literally give up the most. So we're like, this is the kind of situation here where when you get those 15-6 or 15-17 splits, like some of these teams have, within the division, and they play the same team twice, you could really cash in if you're paying attention to those kind of things. That's a great thing to bring up. The other thing from the Dynasty watch there is Dallas Goedert. He got his contract, and I feel like he's only going to continue. He's only going to continue to increase in value, and we've kind of been, he's always been on that fringe of the tight end one. He's starting to look pretty good now.
Well, the target share is the key with Dallas Goedert. Once Zach Ertz left, we had talked about it, but now it's completely validated.
Yeah. And Zach Ertz is balling out. I mean, look at what he's doing with the Cardinals. When you put your JV captain out there, Colt McCoy, he goes out there. It's like he's got to go after Zach Ertz. You had mentioned the guy who has 7 QB1 weeks, right? Kirk Cousins. We'll go to the Green Bay Packers Vikings game. Kirk Cousins. I mean, we talk about this all the time, but people just don't seem to get it.
Perennially underrated. Yeah.
I'm without looking right now, he's in that QB 7 to 8 range. He is a QB1 right now that you can buy for the price of a QB2. Yep. I just told you that he's getting thrown in a deal where the guy has Mahomes and Russell Wilson. Now all of a sudden he's like, hey, take Kirk Cousins. For me, I bought Kirk Cousins in a league a couple weeks ago, like I told you, for Trey Sermon in a second. And it's like, dude, Kirk Cousins just goes out and he puts up numbers. And he is that cheapest QB1 you can possibly buy, right? And he's putting up the similar type numbers and is really making Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen relevant. Justin Jefferson, we talked about Jamar Chase a couple weeks ago being the Dynasty wide receiver 1. Jefferson took offense to that. 8 for 169, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he just
had another one.
He killed it.
Yeah, he really did. The one thing I will say about Kirk Cousins, if you're looking at making a move for him down the stretch, he does have a couple of tough matchups here, though. Looks like at Chicago, Week 15, at home against the Rams in Week 16 with Jalen Ramsey, and then he's got the Packers at Lambeau in Week 17. Although we did just see kind of a shootout.
I was going to say he just put up 35 against them.
Yeah,
you know?
They do have a solid D, but you're right, and that's what you want to see is those shootouts that you're going back and forth and Mr.
sometimes
Rogers on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, sometimes a shootout like that is better for a guy like Kirk Cousins than a game against the Jaguars where they're going to get up big and potentially, and then Dalvin Cook's going to take over. So,
great point.
I'm not saying go out there and sell the farm for Kirk Cousins, but if you really need a quarterback,
the value's there.
Because, I mean, you talk about, like I said, he's the QB7. I mean, Brady's going to cost more. Mahomes, forget about it. Allen, forget about it. Herbert, Hurts, Stafford, forget about it, right? You can't afford any of those guys. And then he jumps in there. He's got more points than Dak. He's got more points than Lamar. He's got more points than Wentz, Burrow. I mean, it's worth at least checking it out. Yeah. It's also worth at this point taking a guy that's in that upper echelon and seeing what you can do, seeing if you can trade a Kirk Cousins and a lesser running back for a stud running back. You know what I'm saying? Like, get yourself into a situation where you can upgrade another position. On the Green Bay side, I mean, I know you were asking me Rodgers or Tannehill, and it's like we got to be worried a little bit with Rodgers with the toe, but man, he just looks fantastic.
That was one of the things that I enjoyed most about Week 11 as well, is because I have a lot of Rodgers, and I was a little bit worried about Mr. Rogers' neighborhood there with the toe and the lack of practice as well. And he came off a rough week coming out of COVID there, if you recall too, and so that was still on my mind. But I stuck with my boy, and he put up monster numbers, 4 touchdowns. I think he was the number 1 quarterback for the week in 6-point touchdown leagues.
He was.
And so, he definitely helped carry me in the Smash League and my home Dynasty League.
In that group chat with Mung, you always ask that, and every time. Every time I just say Rodgers. Halfway into your sentence, I see the little bubble going, and I'm like, he's going to ask it, and I'm going to say Rodgers, baby. Let's do it. Let's move over to San Francisco-Jacksonville game. Jimmy Garoppolo has this team feeding multiple guys right now. Kittle is a tight end 1 every week. Ayuk has been leading the targets over the last 4 weeks. He has 7 receptions for 85 and a touchdown. And Debo just keeps doing it his way, right? 1 catch for 15 yards. Oh, no. Wait a second. 8 carries for 79 and another touchdown. I mean, you got me on the Debo train. Ayuk is starting to come around. Kittle's back into a top 3 or 4 type dynasty tight end. And it's like San Francisco is exciting again.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been exciting, but I mean, I'm talking about across the board.
Right. I'm thankful for Debo. I love watching this kid, and I have a lot of Debo on my rosters. He's the wide receiver 3 in our Smash League right now. And it's something I'm thankful for, having bet on him pretty big, but isn't he just so much fun to watch? I love these new hybrid players. This may actually be the season where we start to really validate these versatile, flexible players like the Cordarrelle Patterson, like a Debo. I think Elijah Moore could be that kind of cat. Maybe even like a Visca Chenault if they
figure it out.
Flew in Jacksonville, But I actually watched some of the replays with him lining up at running back. Again, 8 carries. He had 5 carries last week. He sees the hole. He sets up the defenders. Really good balance, finishes well. Like, he trucked a guy on one play, and he just has that contact balance that you love to see in running backs. And both the last couple of games, he kind of tight rope the sideline, goes into the end zone. He's seen him do that a couple of times, and so he's just getting it done. And that's what Shanahan does. He unlocks them. Like
exactly.
That.
His balance and vision are unparalleled back there. And the thing that we struggled with before is they were trying to get him on bubble screens and things like that. Now they're getting a lot more creative, right? They're manufacturing touches, kind of what we've always been asking for them to do with Laviska Shenault, kind of what Cordarrelle Patterson has been doing. And it's like, you are right. There, it's every team's going to start copying that. It's a copycat league. We know it is. And Debo is just killing it right now. And it's like, in that same league, I was talking about trading DK. How much more? A guy asked me, he's like, I put DK Metcalf up there. I said, I want Debo. How much of a difference is there now when you're talking about trade value? You know, it's like Russell Wilson struggled. DK
Not
hasn't
much.
been all that. It's gotten really close.
It's really close. I would almost have that as like dead even right now.
Yeah, I was
crazy
asking
as
for a
that sounds.
second. That was it.
Yeah,
And then I was like,
right.
But
yeah, he is another example of these injury-prone labels. You know, they're injury-prone until they're not. And you know, the guy is actually tough as nails. I get the soft tissue stuff, but I'm betting on this guy to continue based on what I'm seeing.
I mean, Keenan Allen was injury-prone, right? We said that after like 3 years.
That's right.
He's gone
Here we
7
are.
straight without missing more than 2 games. You know what I mean? So,
right.
and shame on me because I was one of the guys saying that injury-prone thing. You know what I mean? For when it is until it isn't, right? Or the other way around. You know, it's just that's how it goes.
Look, if you're willing to make some of those slightly riskier bets, I mean, find those guys that get those labels and get them for later in the draft. I mean, I did end up getting Debo quite a bit later in the Smash Listener League draft because of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, here we are.
And also in that game, and I know this was early on in the season, and I kind of Mung jumped down my throat when he was talking about Elijah Mitchell, but I was like, guys, back end roster Jeff Wilson. He finds a way to go out, and this week wasn't expressive. It wasn't explosive by any means, but I just bought him for 2 4th-round picks. I bought him in another league for a 4th, and and Adrian Peterson. I don't even like which he just got cut, but it's like Jeff Wilson is a guy that could pan out. Just keep him there. Not going to talk too much about that. Yeah. Let's move over to the Lions and the Browns. The only guy you can argue other than McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor to be in that upper tier is DeAndre Swift. And Swift is doing it on a lot less touches. I mean, you look at 14 carries, 136 rushing yards this week, 3 receptions for 0 yards, but he's still an RB1, you know, and I feel like the more touches this guy gets, you know, once this offense starts to cook, if it ever does, it's probably not going to happen this year. But, man, DeAndre Swift has all the talent to be right up there with Taylor.
Well, and what was the concern, right? Jamal Williams is coming back. He was hardly even relevant in the game.
13 snaps, 4 routes run, 7 carries, next to nothing.
It's really nice to see. Like, they get it. Like, DeAndre Swift can be a bell cow in Detroit. And yeah, they need more trips to the red zone and more scoring opportunities. But what's really fun to watch is him break those big plays. And now, I mean, he's another highlight reel run this week, so he can get it done even from outside the red zone in many cases. He's got that dynamic speed, breakaway capability, makes players miss. So I think that for me, there is a very clear tier right now in dynasty running backs. Top 3, JT, CMC, and Swift. It would be hard to convince me to put anyone else in that top tier right now. Are you with me on this, or do you have anyone else?
Yeah, there's no one else. I mean, I'm not quite – so we talked about it a little bit. I'm not quite saying Taylor's in one by himself because I feel like –
we're not – right.
I feel like within that tier, I mean, I prefer Taylor, then McCaffrey, then Swift. But it's like if you can get anything on top of the other ones, you know, and we were talking about you can write your check right now. You could probably get DeAndre Swift in a first if you were selling Taylor. You know, I
would do that.
I would not argue against that. You know, even though Taylor's on a phenomenal type role here. You said on Twitter you saw someone sell Jonathan Taylor from McCaffrey in a first, and Mung and I were talking about that last week.
Right.
It's like that's why we have tiers. If you can move around in those tiers and you can add value on top of a player, especially with we know how quickly a running back things can change or an injury can happen and they get hampered by things and now all of a sudden you have a little bit of insulation. So no, I like that. And there's really nobody else that's that close. You know, one guy who came back this week and looked great, Nick Chubb, 22 carries, 130 yards, 5 avoided tackles, a receiving touchdown, you know, and Kareem Hunt's going to be coming back. But Nick Chubb is a guy that you can still buy fairly inexpensive for your stretch run here. I mean, I feel like he is someone that just because he's been out of sight, out of mind, there's a lot of people that are like, hey, I'm willing to sell Nick Chubb right now. Maybe Nick Chubb isn't the answer for my dynasty team because he doesn't catch passes, but you got to go out there and get Nick Chubb, right?
Yeah, definitely. And he's going to get it done for you. He's a clear RB1. He's got Las Vegas, a juicy matchup in Week 15. They are 28th against the run. Then he's got at Green Bay, at Pitt. Okay, middle of the road in terms of running back fantasy points allowed. So I like that one. It definitely depends on the value, but when he gets rejoined in the backfield by Hunt, that might actually cause a few people to be willing to part with him for a little bit less. So, yeah, and the offense is clearly defined by the run. So, week in, week out, he's going to get his touches. They're going to focus on the run. I got to tell you, Baker still seems to be struggling. And so the identity will be Nick Chubb. You know what I'm saying? Like they may work in some Hunt, but he's going to get plenty of work. And he's a guy that is just that pure runner and makes most of what he gets. So, yeah, absolutely with you on that.
Ravens-Bears game, Rashad Bateman was supposed to be the breakout, right? This was going to be it. And it was like, obviously Lamar's out, so, that gets a little bit different. But
yeah.
Darnell Mooney is here, man. Like 5 receptions, 121 yards, a touchdown, 41.7% threat rate. The guy was all over the field. And I know Allen Robinson's out, but once Fields went down, I mean, Andy Dalton was just locked onto him, right? Him and Marquise Goodwin, and things started to click a little bit. And now we get the news that, Nagy is gone now.
Honestly,
so I feel like
everybody in the Bears offense.
I think you have to. I'm not getting crazy with it, but it's got to unlock some things. And I think players sometimes, when the coaches, they feel like they've been blaming the coach, and the players aren't playing well with what they're gonna come out hungry, and they're gonna come out, super excited to play here. And I think, I'm not saying go out there and buy a bunch of Bears, but it should be interesting.
I think it really, for me, that's going to be more about next season.
Yeah.
For when we start to see things take off for the Bears. I'm most excited for Justin Fields, but Darnell Mooney too. Monty as well. The full Monty could take off a little bit more with a better coach. Just keep in mind, I mean, will the Bears find the right guy though? Or do they go find, let's say, a defensive-minded coach that's very conservative on the offensive side? Like, you got to be careful. Like, we don't really know yet. So there's a fair amount of risk on who they might go get. It does sound like Kitchens could be the interim OC. Of course, he did that in Cleveland as well. And, okay, that could be interesting for David Montgomery. A little bit, right? We saw how he ran that offense there in Cleveland for a little bit, again, run heavy. But, I'm definitely going to temper my expectations for the Bears until next season. But in general, I would say arrow is ticking up for just about everybody on the offense, if you had to kind of speculate, right?
So
can't get much worse. Right?
We have a tough situation, obviously, here with Fields. I mean, he goes out.
Yeah,
he has 2 good weeks. He comes out this week. He gets banged up. Now, I got a question for you. We're going to go a little strategy here again. It's in the Pros versus Joes FFPC. I am tied, for I think 4th place. Only 6 teams make the playoffs. And the guy I'm playing this week is the 1 seed. So I'm thinking to myself, I play him this week. Tyreek Hill's on bye. Justin Fields is not playing. And we got an offer on the table right now of Jalen Hurts and Keenan Allen plus a second for Tyreek Hill and Justin Fields. It's like, you get the win. Sometimes you can make those moves, but it's like, I feel like I'm going to lose in the long run, and I'm just, sometimes you can make trades.
Be careful with those.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a smart move on his end by offering that out there, because sometimes you look at it and you're like, ooh, I could get the win this week. So many times it happens, that trade where you take that trade and all of a sudden you don't get that win, you don't make the playoffs, and you gave up the 2 shinier pieces. So just be careful with those kind of situations.
Do be careful. Yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that. What do you think that Justin Fields is worth right now?
Man,
in Superflex, I'm just pulling up the trade finder here.
I mean, if you look at guys, we've been talking about Hurts. Would you do that even if you had Justin Fields and someone makes that offer to you? Because you're feeling a little unshaky about his future, and you're trying to rebuild a little bit. And I know the age isn't there, but if you're rebuilding in that sense, I mean, who would you rather have out of those 2 right now?
If I'm competing, that'd be really tempting to do straight up for Hurts. I see another one here.
I would do that in a heartbeat.
For Russell Wilson. Yeah, I think people would probably do it. right?
Yeah.
Another trade I'm looking at: Justin Fields for Russell Wilson. Here, Justin Fields in a first for Joe Mixon.
Well, let's talk about Joe. Hey, let's talk about Joe Mixon. I mean, right? Joe Mixon. It was your bold takes. We talked about Jalen Hurts, and I took my little victory lap. You have one as well, right? Because two of those running backs you said on that bold take show, those guys are balling out, and that's Eckler and Mixon. They looked fantastic this week, and I believe Mixon has a stretch here that's quite impressive over the last 8 weeks.
Yeah, I am thankful for Joe Mixon and Austin Eckler. And you're right. I mean, I'm definitely proud of that bold take, having both Eckler and Mixon in the top 5. I just went and looked in the Smash League where I have Joe Mixon. He is number 5 right now overall running back rankings. Eckler, I think, after that 4 touchdown week, is up to number 2 overall.
Number 2, yep.
Back ranking. So,
and Derrick Henry's still number 3, baby.
And there's Derrick Henry still sitting on my bench.
We're talking about Jonathan Taylor potentially being an MVP candidate, but Derrick Henry still should be. I mean, literally, it took this long for someone to pass him, and we still only have 2 running backs who have more fantasy points than him, and he's been out 3 weeks now.
Right, and just you're looking at the Tennessee offense. They try to mix in all these different running backs, and it's just not working. Like, Derrick Henry is so critical. He was the identity of that offense. You look at Ryan Tannehill now. They lose to Houston, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
The play action is kind of gone because they don't really respect the running game as much. That was sort of the bread and butter, and the new OC there in Tennessee. Obviously has some weight there as well. But come on, Derrick Henry was clearly the MVP of that Tennessee offense. But just coming back to Mixon and Eckler, they are getting it done just about every week. We had
Mixon the last 3 weeks, 25, 28, 24. And it was this week he got 30 carries for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's what we were saying.
If you look at the rest of them,
right?
It's 12, 14, 18. That he's had 2 games where he's had over 22 carries, and he's put up almost 25 fantasy points in both of them. And I think that offense is starting to get a little bit more balanced. You look at what he's been able to do, and he's on pace for 1,400 rushing yards. He's got 9 rushing touchdowns already. Joe Mixon is who we thought he was going to be, and he might be one of those. He's still a guy that there's still a negative connotation about Joe Mixon because of his underperformance over the last few years. You should still be able to buy him, and I think if you get an offer, let's say someone comes to you today and they said, I'll give you DeAndre Swift first and a second for Joe Mixon. If you're a contender, is that something you're would you consider that?
Run that one by me again.
And so if we're selling back, trying to get a little bit of insulation there, and maybe you're not a big fan of Swift, trade Swift for Mixon in a first plus a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I really would think about that if you're competing, or maybe it's Mixon in another piece because Mixon is actually putting up even slightly better numbers than Swift in certain formats right now, and he's clearly attached to a young, exciting offense. He's a bell cow. I mean, they do work in Pirine on third downs a lot, but when it matters,
blows my mind, right? Because
it does.
Mixon is a so much better receiver than Pirine, but you got to keep him fresh.
Yeah, pass blocking and all that, but you're keeping him fresh. I mean, he's still got 30 carries. That's the point, and he scored 2 more touchdowns, and so I really love Mixon going forward, and he does kind of have a slightly challenging playoff schedule. Just looking at it, but I do love Joe Mixon. He's one of the guys that I'm thankful for sure. And maybe coming back over to Austin Eckler, what's really fun to watch there is he's now become like the goal line red zone guy. In fact, just look this up. Only through week 11, he already has more touches in the red zone than any of his previous seasons. He's already surpassed that. Like they're feeding him the ball, obviously evidenced by 4 touchdowns. That's just something we haven't seen from Eckler before. So he's still getting a lot of the rushing work. Clearly he's getting worked into the passing game. The Chargers offense has been pretty strong for the most part, attached to Herbert and crew. And so Eckler is exactly what we were hoping for when we threw that bold take out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's on pace for over 1,000 yards rushing. I mean, we always knew the receptions were going to be there. Right now, he's got 45 receptions, but the rushing totals are there, and that's what's different. You know, if you look at years past, he has the more rushing yards at this point in 2021 than he's ever had. He's got 573. Right. You know, you look at 2020 was 530, 557, 554. He's been a 500-yard, and he's the tricky part with that is obviously there's the usage, there's more involvement there, but the receptions are still there. So I mean, he is literally a bell cow 3-down back now.
Lighting it up,
and it's fantastic. Moving over to similar type thing. Let's talk about Carolina. Christian McCaffrey's, he's getting worked back in there. 10 carries, 59, 7 receptions, 60 receiving yards, and a touchdown. 4.7 yards after contact per carry. But the thing to really look at is before, if it was Sam Darnold, all the touchdowns are going to be scored by Christian McCaffrey, right? If we get inside the 10, it's McCaffrey time. Now we get inside the 10, and I'm back. Cam Newton comes back, right? And, dude, I was watching that game, and I absolutely loved it, right? Like, you got to feel good for Cam Newton. Like,
you love it, right?
He expended so much energy in the first half. I thought he was going to, every touchdown, he's running around the stadium, and he's just...
He goes and spikes the ball on the logo, like...
Oh, it was great.
Reclaiming his spot. Oh, love to see it.
But Cam Newton put up over 30 fantasy points in certain formats this week. I mean, he was left for dead. Good for him. But this definitely affects Christian McCaffrey's value a little bit.
It does. No, for sure. I mean, we've already seen it. He's called his own number, and I think it was like the very first time he touched the ball last week. He called his own number, gets the rushing touchdown. And say what you want about the guy, but he is a load to bring down. Yeah. So he's still going to be worked in that way. Mm-hmm. And it definitely adds another element to the offense. I did like a lot of the usage that we saw from McCaffrey. Mm-hmm. And
I think it's going to balance out, right? I mean, because he did get he got 8 targets in the passing game, and Cam Newton knows Christian McCaffrey, right? He knows how to get him the ball. He knows how to work it to him too.
Yeah, he was looking for him a lot. Yeah.
The other thing I think you got to look at is Chuba didn't touch the ball at all. Amir Abdullah surpassed him as the backup now. And I know we've been saying it for a couple of weeks where that was somebody you could go out there and, you could still get some value.
Good call.
When Christian McCaffrey's there, the backup doesn't matter. But it's like Chuba's kind of fallen back a little bit.
Kind of faded away a little bit. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Cam Newton as well. Like, where do you have him rest of season in terms of QB rankings? Like, this is a fun conversation. I know if Mung were here, he would come in strong and say, Cam Newton is a QB1 rest of season. Do you agree?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
You've got him below that.
No. There was a lot of adrenaline there. I'm not sure if you realize, but Washington's a bottom 5, when it comes to pass defense. And it was a great situation there for Cam. But it's like, man, like, it's hard to see that sustaining, right? Like, it's hard to just, at his age, right now he's playing off a lot of adrenaline and things like that, and his body has not taken the beating of Cam.
He's coming a lot more fresh.
He is so fresh right now, and I mean, I would say 15 to 18 range. He's going to have some QB1 weeks, but I mean, there are a lot of guys where, I'm not going out there and actively buying Cam Newton if I don't already have him on my roster. What do you think?
Well, I think that you got to be careful that you don't give in to the hype a little bit too much and start to overpay for him. But he's in a good situation there, and I think that he looks to me like it's crazy that within 2 weeks he's already reestablished as the heart and soul of this franchise.
Yeah, it's nothing happened, right?
No. Yeah, but and you love the narrative, but I think week to week the arm still is just not there. Right, he's not the Cam of old, so you have to be careful. I think that he is getting to that borderline low-end QB1, at the tail end of it, in a 14-team league, right? I mean, I think he's somewhere in that range.
Yeah,
he'd be a nice piece, and I think he's someone to pretty much target if you need a QB2 down the stretch. I mean, it's easy to sell him that he's unlikely to go that much longer. Maybe another season in Carolina. I don't know. But but yeah, it's probably about right, Mike. I mean, I think that Hmong might be the highest of the group, but I do think that there could be some potential value there in a dynasty move.
Well, on the other side of the ball in that game, I mean, Taylor Heinicke comes up and he puts up 16 for 22, 206 and 3 with a gritty performance, running the ball a little bit, and he looked great, and I feel like that was an exciting move at the quarterback position. And then there are some cheaper buys you can have right now in Superflex, like some guys that can go out there. I don't
Heinicke,
have
Cousins.
a QB2 this week, and I'm going to let you know I bought 2 shares of the coldest quarterback in the league. That's Matty Ice. He's coming off 2 really bad performances. But I got him today for 2 late thirds. Or I'm sorry. Yeah, 2 late thirds and Donald Parham. And I'm like, I was like, wow. And I'm like, if we have to look at this a little bit, is like he was a top 12 quarterback before these last 2 weeks. He had been putting up a top 12 season, but you come off a game where you put up 1.8 and then 3.65. And if it's Scott Fishbowl, you're looking at like -8, in some of those weeks, when he was 9 for 21. I feel like you could go out there as a contender, and maybe your trade deadlines are this week, and you can get him as your third quarterback really cheap. And it's not like it's exciting, but it could give you some nice insulation.
You need guys like that. Yeah, I could see it. I still have that image of him just laying on the field.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not. It's not sexy. I'm not even lying. But when you're talking about throwing in some late thirds,
yeah, and he should do a little bit better. I mean, they didn't have Cordarrelle Patterson. He's still been without Calvin Ridley.
Cordarrelle Patterson should be the MVP of the league, man. Look what happens when he's out of the offense.
Totally, yeah. So the offense is going to recover. Clearly, they struggled. You had a nice game plan against them. I think they're going to have better weeks ahead. And so, yeah, I'm cool with that move.
Well, let's stay at the position. We're talking about struggling quarterbacks. I mean, and we're just kind of vibing right now, and I love it.
Yeah.
But that game between the Chiefs and the Cowboys, I turned off Red Zone, right? I love Red Zone. You and I talked about it. You get your salty proteins. You go out there. I just love it. But I'm like, I want to watch every play of this game. And, man, I mean –
highest over-under for the week, right? And all these expectations is going to be a shootout. These 2 quarterbacks, loaded offenses.
I mean, Dak puts up 4 fantasy points, and Mahomes puts up 11 in the week, depending what your format is. That was not what you were expecting, right? I mean, a bunch of my buddies are like, they did the bets of 2+ touchdowns for both of them. I mean, this is not what you were expecting from either of them.
No.
And they're putting they're mixing in giant performances with absolute duds. And I mean,
that's right. Mahomes, same thing, right? Yeah, Mahomes last week blows up, does 45 points, I believe, in certain formats. And then the following week, it's a single-digit score again. And it's definitely concerning that we thought that maybe the Chiefs had turned the corner, but here we are, and Mahomes has another dud. And really, that's what I'm asking myself here is what are we doing with the Chiefs down the stretch? I mean, especially Mahomes and the running backs. What are you thinking? I mean, with the inconsistencies, the concerns that they can't keep it going, what is your take on the Chiefs right now for the stretch run?
I mean, Hill and Kelsey are still getting theirs, right? And that's not a worry at all. The running backs, I don't feel comfortable starting any of the running backs. And I mean, if you have Mahomes, you're starting him, right? There's very few situations where you're like, I don't know, maybe I could go with somebody with a higher ceiling this week. Because you look at, 2 weeks ago he put up, 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, and then he comes up against Dallas and he puts up 260 and 0. Well, so it's like you have to start Mahomes week in and week out for that upside. There are not too many situations. Him, right? You have to do it.
Yeah,
right.
That's kind of the deal. It's just so hard to get out of that situation, and pretty much with Dak too. Like you're pretty much stuck with the guy.
Yeah.
Unless you want to trade him for another elite player that you think you could get in return, it might be worth thinking about. But
and now you talk about Dak. I mean, you got Cooper's not going to be playing this week because of COVID. CeeDee Lamb, got the concussion, so he's a little bit banged up. We talked
Yeah.
about several weeks ago, Michael Gallup's coming back, and now he
Right.
puts himself as like the wide receiver one of this offense.
Yeah.
And
Those are you picked up Gallup on, some
Gallup
of those tips
and Schultz.
on that.
Schultz should be
those are the guys. Cedric
and-
Wilson, kind of an interesting
Yeah.
flyer too, right? But yeah,
It's-
I'm looking forward to watching the boys on Thanksgiving. But it's not going to be that full offensive firepower we're used to, right?
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I was talking about this with someone else. It's like Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, Dak. They are having some real up and down weeks, and it scares me a little bit going into the playoffs. Where I know, and I'm not advocating
Indeed.
too much of this, but I know when I have Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and even Jalen Hurts that they're putting up a consistent number. And sometimes I prefer that where it's like
The floor that you get with some of those guys,
yeah, I
right?
mean, you look at some of these guys, you go with Herbert since week 5, it's 54, 15, 20, 39, 15, 45. It's like all over the place. And some of those are the kind of performances are going to win you the week. And other ones you're going to sit there and just scratch your head and be like,
it's wild to talk about Mahomes as a boom bust quarterback.
Yeah.
That's actually what he's been this season.
Yeah.
I have him in a redraft league, and I think I lost all of my weeks on a bust and I'm winning. I
have
literally,
him
with Mahomes, I had the highest point total in the league last week, and I had second or third lowest point total the week after.
Yeah.
It's because of the Mahomes factor.
Yep, and I have him and Brady in my only redraft in my 2-quarterback league, and weeks 9 and 11 where he put up 10 points and 14 points are my only losses the entire year because he's just been – the rest of my team's good, but those have been real boom busts. I mean, not even borderline. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
And
all or nothing.
yeah, I mean, I think
I'm with you on these running backs too, and that was another thing that was rough to watch about this week. Going into week 11, almost all the analysts, the experts that were out there saying that, hey, you probably need to stick with Darrell Williams. CEH is super iffy, maybe not even playable. In the first quarter, you're like, it's all CEH. Darrell Williams is MIA. I don't know too many people that got that right, but I get concerned about that running game as well in Kansas City.
for sure. I mean, it's tough to trust. Yeah, I mean, Mung and I had a bet before the season started that I said Jonathan Taylor. He said CEH will have more fantasy points. So he's some charity's gonna get a nice.
You now.
Nice. No, we did it for charity, so it's okay in that round.
Right.
But I want to talk a little bit, because we're getting close to that hour mark here, about how you sometimes deal with buys towards the end of the year here, right? So what I've been looking at is James Conner right now is the RB8. James Conner has had a fine season. If you have a team that's a fringe, they're like, oh man, I'm right on the fringe, right? If I win these next 2 games, I'm in the playoffs. Sometimes you can pay and get a James Conner off that guy's team because he needs a running back for this week.
Yeah, he needs to win out, right? And so he can't afford to lose this week. Yeah.
So you can take a guy like, I mean, maybe Damian Harris, who's in a situation where Stevenson's starting to come up, and get a guy for a stretch run. I bought Connor in a league in a trade I just recently made because you're probably not going to like this. You're probably not going to like it. I sent it to you, but I was like, I ended up getting Godwin and Connor for Derrick Henry and Allen Robinson. And I know that's not a sexy trade, but I'm like, I'm all in.
Okay.
I'm all in. I'm trying to win it. And it's
pushing
like
the chips.
It's tough, because sometimes
Yeah.
you got to get those kind of returns, and I'm looking to three-peat, so I feel a little bit.
Yeah.
When you win once, you're like, I got to win again. When you win the league twice in a row, you just feel like if I don't win it all, it's a lost season.
Yeah, you do put that pressure on yourself. But it's actually a good call. I actually pulled off a trade for Stafford last week when he was on his bye. Same situation. I looked at this guy. He was like 5-5 coming in the week, trying to get in the playoffs. And so I got a bit of a discount because I knew he had to have somebody playing that week. So it's definitely a strategy to look at.
Yeah, and it's all about knowing your league mates. I mean, some guys are like, well, I'll just play it tight, and there are several owners that they'll be okay not making the playoffs. And for me, it's like, whew, if I'm on the fringe, I'm either going all in or I'm just selling my pieces. I hate being in that middle.
What just on the Rams for a quick second here?
Yeah.
What do you make of the wide receiver situation down the stretch, right? Because without Bobby Woods, with now Odell Beckham, who's now had a little bit more time with the playbook, And then you got Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee. Stafford's continuing to air it out with McVay. So which of those guys do you think rises to the top in your opinion outside my little Cooper Kupp?
Cooper Kupp's going to keep getting his, obviously.
Yeah, that's really the answer, right?
I feel like it's kind of a heart versus head, right? I want to see the Odell Beckham of old come back. And I feel like talent-wise, you have to be like, he's at least on par with Robert Woods. It's a matter of how quick can he get the system down. Is he going to be a diva or things going to go in there? I'm buying Jefferson cheap.
Okay, right.
Beckham.
Yep. Take the discount.
Yeah, I feel like it's just, it seems like the easier route. But I do want to see some big things from Beckham, but I just don't know. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think that those guys, if anything, may just kind of cancel each other out just a bit. Darrell Henderson, Cooper Kupp are the guys.
Yeah.
That you want, right?
I think you could get Beckham for a second and
I think so.
Toss
Easy.
in. And I feel like we talked about it before where he wasn't even worth a second there for a while. So if you're not contending, go for it. Move off of him. Another interesting wide receiver situation is obviously the Titans lose to the Texans this week. We all knew that was coming. But now we get into a situation where A.J. Brown is hurt, and Julio's on IR.
Julio's out.
What do we expect from this Tennessee offense now? I mean, there is not much to go. Ryan Tannehill's playing his heart out, but yeah.
And McNichols is hurt, right? So, Dontrell Hilliard is an interesting flyer. I think Dante Foreman is still going to get quite a bit of work now. Upgrade him after the news today.
I mean, the leader in snaps was Dez Fitzpatrick, and that story itself is crazy, right? 4th-round draft pick, they cut him, nobody wants him, and they take him back. And he scores his first touchdown. Chester Rogers, Westbrook, how do you pronounce it?
I couldn't even tell you.
Ikini?
Hyphen.
No, but yeah, there's a hyphen in there. But it's like A.J. Brown not being in here it's just a difficult situation because, I mean, they are just it's not the same offense, and it's just.
No, it looks like an avoid for me until we can see them kind of get reestablished and they have some mojo back. So, for the foreseeable future, if you have better options, or you should highly be considering them playing them.
Now, let me talk to you about this now. A.J. Brown has been a letdown for sure. He's had a couple of weeks in here. If you are a playoff team, and I am in most leagues, and I have A.J. Brown, and I sold him for Jalen Hurts in our league way back and got a lot of beef for that. People were like, that is a horrible move. Now, what do we do with A.J. Brown? I mean, let's talk to some of the listeners here. You have A.J. Brown. You're in that playoff situation. He's got a ton of dynasty value. Who are we trying to trade down for? Who are we trying to insulate maybe, or who would you move evenly for? I mean, there's some guys like, would you trade A.J. Brown for Terry McLaurin if you're a playoff team right now? There's a lot of situations where Brown is frustrating, and now he's got a hand injury on top of that.
Yeah, I'm just actually pulling up DLF Trade Finder. I see 2 different trades in here. A.J. Brown for Devonta Smith and a first. Okay.
Done.
That's kind of interesting.
Done.
Yeah, you're good with that one.
I'm done. I would take it.
A.J. Brown and a 4th for Antonio Gibson, Daniel Jones, and a first. Okay.
I use that's a lot of the 4th-round picks always throw me off whenever I see those in the trades.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, throw in a 4th and we'll get that done.
Right. A.J. Brown for Calvin Ridley and a 2nd. That's interesting.
That one's scary to me.
Yeah.
But you understand what I'm saying here is we're in a situation where it's like, man.
Here's A.J. Brown for Pitts. I think I'd take that too. I mean, I feel like if you're in a situation here, we talk about a lot of insulated values trying to get that pick. What about, I mean, this is a difficult situation for me because I love A.J. Brown. I do. But these injuries are piling up, and it's starting to get really frustrating as someone who, is invested in the way A.J. Brown plays. But there's A.J. Brown and a first for Christian McCaffrey. Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Package him up. I see.
What about
they packaged him for
Deontay Johnson in a second? There's some moves like that I've seen. I would take that. Deontay Johnson is a target machine, and it's like.
Yeah, this is interesting. A.J. Brown for Cam Akers and Rashad Bateman.
Okay.
Obviously, if you're not competing and you want to try to capitalize on that value that he has, that perceived value, that's kind of interesting.
It's just something to think about. I mean, there's so many moves to make right now. This has been a fun show, but guys, send us your trades. Tag us, put the Smash Accept in there, put John, put myself, put Mung. We want to help you guys out with trades. We hope this week, we tried to drop in a couple, strategy type points, some moves to make for you guys. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did putting it out there. I mean, we are super thankful. John said, all the Fs. We're thankful for you guys as well. The followers and the people. We're a community, and I think a lot of you reached out last week. And when I was talking about your trades, I wasn't saying this person that listens to the show. I was saying people that we interact with. I mean, we love interacting with you guys on Twitter. We love the DMs and just talking about some of these trades, because this is literally what we love to do. I mean, just talking trades, looking at different angles, trying to see what works. And I mean, John and I were talking on the phone about a trade the other day, and it just felt like a podcast. Like we were literally 20 minutes debating this trade, going back and forth, and it's that's why we got into this. So we are super thankful for you guys. Enjoy football this week. Enjoy the family this week, and it's this is one of my favorite times of year.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo that. Definitely thankful for all the Smash listeners for this pod. It's been going now 64 episodes. Definitely thankful for Mike and Mung and really the whole Smash Accept crew. Shout out to all you guys. And I really hope you enjoy Thanksgiving as well. I know I will.
64 episodes, still going strong, man. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and enjoy the process.